Hey there, everyone. My name is Kelvin. I am JavaScript engineer and Devrel at Trouble. Today is the second Frameworkless APS challenge. The first one was on PHP, which was amazing. Today, we're going to be building an API with Elixir without a framework. All right. So I'm super excited about this one because I personally want to learn Elixir, and the person that has accepted the challenge is Felipe. So let's meet Felipe. How you doing, Felipe?
Hey everyone,
Hey,
really glad to be here.
yeah, me too. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for accepting this API's challenge to build an API with Alexa. So before we get started into this challenge, because I'm really excited about this one, I really want to just get on it. But
Into the code, yeah.
yeah, so but first of all, let's know who Felipe is. So give us a bit of introduction about yourself, like who you are, what you've been doing, and what you currently do.
So I am Filipe. I'm from Portugal, near Lisbon, and currently I'm working at Supabase. And honestly, the biggest thing I'm kind of doing now is Elixir. It's my love at the moment. It's the language I'm kind of specializing in, and I'm trying to do as much as I can to kind of spread the word about Elixir. And as such, one of my efforts is just to do more talks and be part of the community as someone that can show how easy it is to actually get on board with the language. And that's part of the reason why I've accepted this challenge. Uh, because I talked with Calvin, one of the biggest hurdles is people think that they need to go with a framework and go all big, with all the complexity that is attached to a framework. I'm going to try to show that there's other ways of doing it, in a potentially simpler way, or at least less magical. So yeah, that's basically me.
Yeah, cool. So, I'm curious now. So, why did you choose Elixir as your love language? Because everyone has a love language. Like, so my last guess, his love language was PHP. Like, so the mine language is JavaScript. So for you, why is it Elixir? What about the language got
So
you? I got to do this.
so a long time ago, I think 8 years ago or something like that. I worked with Elixir for the first time, coming from a background of Scala, Java, and and a bit of Clojure, but really small amounts of Clojure. But thanks to Scala and Clojure, I kind of started to listen more about functional programming languages, with actually the way you structure the code in functional programming languages made way more sense for me.
Mhm.
It's way easier for me to think in terms of functions being applied to data versus, I don't know, object oriented, where you have entities that need to be manipulated inside and whatsoever.
Mhm.
So functional really clicked with me. That's the first thing that kind of drove me to find Elixir. Then I actually worked in a company called Talkdesk that had Elixir while Elixir was really young. I think we had the version 1.3 or 1.4.
Okay.
Um, so it was not early stages, but still young. Didn't have a formatter, didn't have a couple of shenanigans that exist now and are really useful. But yeah, first thing was the tooling. The core team out of the box gives you testing, formatting, documentation. It basically brings everything into the same box without adding extra dependencies.
Mm.
The extra dependencies it's basically just sugar on top of a beautiful cake,
Mhm.
because then you have everything. You start with everything you need
Okay.
to do any kind of project, and then you have a dependency, for example, for there's one for code readability called Credo, which is
Mhm.
really well known and used within the community.
Okay.
Uh, but again, it's an extra. The base tooling, it's already there. That was the first thing. It's out of the box. I can do mix new project
Mhm.
done. I can do tests. I have a config management. I have release management. I have everything out of the box without bothering with anything.
Wow.
The other thing, it's a language that's really prone to REPL driven development. I'm a
Okay.
big fan of just having a REPL open, and just while I'm coding, I'm recompiling, I'm trying new ideas instead of going through the cycle of Control C, recompile,
Mhm.
continue, and I really hated that flow. Um, with this approach, it's much easier. It's just recompile. It does everything done. The other thing is, in my background, I've worked with Ruby. Uh,
Okay.
I really like the Ruby syntax. I think it's really simple, and the fact that Elixir kind of embraced that was probably one of the best things they could have done, because the syntax is quite easy to learn. Applied to functional, it's just a win-win. So
Okay.
that's the other part. The syntax is a big improvement. But
Okay.
again, this comes to taste, because if you
Yeah.
talk with someone that really likes Erlang, they'll say that
Hmm.
Erlang syntax is really good.
Yeah.
Personally, I really like the Ruby syntax. This is basically match made in heaven. That's
Yeah.
why a lot of people from Ruby usually migrate to Elixir, out of curiosity of, what can I do in this language that I can't in Ruby,
Hmm.
while the syntax kind of stays similar to what I'm used to.
Okay. So I'm hearing syntax, tooling, and just what the language gives you out of the box. So
Yeah,
that is a lot. That makes a lot of sense, and it does sound really good and appealing. So yeah, sure. So definitely, like you said, someone that uses PHP is gonna say you likes PHP because of XYZ, and you so I think it mostly is background and what you naturally just gravitate to in terms of style. Like
yeah,
yeah, so for me personally, I do not enjoy the Python style of syntax for some reason. I like the C style of syntax with the curly braces. I know it makes more sense for my brain to parse. So it just we just differ that way, and that's why we have so many languages, right? For different people. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it's a lot on that side, right? You'll find that's why I don't I really dislike language wars,
Mm-hmm.
because people are just discussing opinions and their personal side. Everyone
Yeah.
should recognize that everyone has their own way of viewing the world, their own way of what do they like and they don't. And
Mm-hmm.
we should just be grateful that we have so many options that cater for so many people, and that we're able to kind of build awesome stuff
Mm-hmm.
without a lot of pain. We're just doing stuff
Mm-hmm.
built on shoulders of giants, and we do
Yes.
have a lot of options, and we should be really grateful for that and just ignore any kind of language squabbles. So
Yeah.
it's just an annoying an
I
annoyance, in the
Yeah,
middle of
it's
everything.
it is because we software engineers we tend to like form like a cult on our
Yeah,
tools and languages.
yeah,
Um, I I feel like the languages, the frameworks, whatever, they're just tools really, and
yeah.
what use whatever works well for you for your worldview, your mindset. Just do it. And speaking about tools and stuff, so we are saying we're doing a frameworkless APIs challenge. Like, why should one, with all the great frameworks out there, for every language, there's always like one, two, three, four, five frameworks or more. But why do you need to learn the language really? Like the language itself more than the framework. Yeah.
uh, Again, without wanting to enter in language wars and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that,
Yeah.
um, I've came from a Rails development world, and I've also done Python Django in my past.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those frameworks, I felt that they were too magical. And one can say the same from, for example, Phoenix. Um, as soon as you kind of, let's imagine that I'm trying to do something new in Phoenix. If I'm not versed in the language and in the ecosystem, I'm going to follow a tutorial, everything works, and probably I'm not going to dive into why it works.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of meta programming, there's a lot of magic that is happening that people end up not knowing. So they're adding dependencies on top of their code without fully understanding what they're adding, and fully understanding what's happening. And it's not uncommon to see people kind of just using without thinking, which then has a consequence, right? Because any kind of thing that you want to do that is a bit on the side or a bit out of the box, or that edge case that you're not used to, then you'll find the necessity of diving into the code and into the deeper parts of your framework,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be lost because you'll feel the pressure of, I need to fix this now, I should have done this in another time. It's I think their frameworks have their spot, but people should know a bit more about their languages, about their tooling, about everything, before going all in into a fully fledged framework. They should see a bit the roots of what they're using.
Yeah.
Not only that, for a lot of use cases, frameworks are really just not needed. It's a lot of extra dependencies and a lot of extra complexity, because any kind of framework or any kind of library you add to your code, it's just an abstraction to something. So you're basically adding layers on top of layers on top of layers
Mm-hmm.
when probably you might not need it. For example, for a REST API, as we are going to do,
Mm-hmm.
potentially there's not much need to go all in and have the latest, greatest framework. Potentially just need a couple of an exposed endpoint, and that's it.
Yeah.
In more and more on this side of everyone is kind of going microservices versus monolith and whatever. But if you have a microservice, why do you need a fully fledged framework? You might just need a simple basic JSON API behind an API gateway in your infrastructure, and that's it. That handles everything else. So I'm a big fan of that idea of less is more in terms of development, and less dependency sometimes reflects in more speed and more simplicity and better onboarding, for example.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so I actually agree with all your points because I also believe that it's best, you learn the language, even if you're going to use a framework. The language, if you learn the language really well, it gives you better options and better knowledge on how the framework works because sometimes I have seen scenarios where developers don't know where the framework stops and where the language continues. So they feel that the language is
Exactly.
the framework and the framework is the language, vice versa. So that just it makes your learning a little bit myopic because you just don't know the extent your language could go on its own without the framework. And like you say, they're just abstraction, right? And when there are so many layers of abstraction, you don't really get the benefit of learning anymore, right? Because you just pick the tool, you just do your stuff, and when it's time to like just tweak it a little bit, you struggle because you don't really quite understand what was going on. And like you said, these frameworks have magic, metaprogramming. They're just too many layers that often you don't even need it to really do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
that's
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, sure thing. So I think this is a good segue to get into the topic, which is building an API with Elixir. I have not used Elixir before, but I've heard good things, like I've said before, like I told you before we started. And yeah, so I'm really excited. So what are we building today? Yes, it's an API. What sort of API?
So we're going to do a small news API. So the idea
Okay.
is you'll be able to create a user. For that user, we'll save topics. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever that user fetches a specific endpoint, it fetches the headlines for all the topics that person just submitted.
Okay.
This is going to use um, a web server called Cowboy, which
Okay.
is an Erlang. It's an Erlang project, but
Mm-hmm.
Elixir can use Erlang, so we're going to use that, and it's the most common web server. There are other things appearing at the moment, like Rex and Bandit,
Okay.
but we're going to go with what's kind of tested and proved to be
Okay.
working, and usually the common path. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to use something called plugs, which is just a middleware. So we're adding a dependency,
Mm-hmm.
but it's basically just a middleware to make everything a bit easier to work with, and
Okay.
it's way easier for beginners because then we don't need to deal with Elixir Erlang interoperability. There's some quirks there, but again, it's a minor dependency
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to add. Um, and yeah, the other thing we're going to use is Ecto, which
Okay.
is basically the DSL to communicate with our database. So we're going to save everything in Postgres.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and then we're going to use Rec, which is HTTP client that just does requests for us, and that's basically it. So we're going to use these dependencies and JSON, which is basically encoding and decoding JSON from everywhere, to the
Mm-hmm.
responses and from the request, the requester.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically our goal. It's in the end, we want to have a way for a user to access a bunch of headlines for the subjects he wanted to see,
Ooh.
and just give a JSON response with those headlines.
Perfect, perfect. So, what do you say we get into it like right now? Let's build this.
Let's.
Okay.
So do tell me when the screen
Yeah.
is there, because okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Because again, I
We're
only
there.
have one monitor, so it will be an interesting balance.
Yes.
So
Don't worry. I'll key you in. So,
So here I have the command line, and this is how you start an Elixir project. You just basically give it, if we do help new, it has a bunch of documentation you can follow.
okay.
So this is one of the things I was mentioning. Elixir is really good in this side of things. Documentation is really strong everywhere, from the website to the command line. Usually everything is just really, really good.
Yeah.
So if I do
So
new project,
quick question. How do
mhm.
so if I'm getting started with Elixir for the first time, how do I get mix up on my machine?
So if you have Mac OS, you can
Okay.
just do brew install
Oh,
Elixir,
okay.
and that's
Oh,
it.
cool. And that will give me the
You can
mix
also
CLI.
use uh, if you do brew install Elixir, it installs Mix and installs Elixir, the
Okay.
interpreter. So
Okay,
it
cool.
installs everything you need, and you can also do it with ASDF. They also have plugins for it. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how to list plugins in ASDF. It's not the most user-friendly interface,
Okay.
ASDF, but you can also do this with ASDF, where you just have an Elixir plugin and you have everything from there.
Nice.
So let's go to the right folder, which is this one. And now, if we look into it, yeah, we have a bunch of code. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first element. Let's open our mix EXS. So this is the basically the setup of our project. Imagine it as the package JSON of
Okay.
Elixir.
Okay.
One of the advantages is everything here is actually code. So if you want to do anything in the middle that is a bit more complex, you can do it here,
Oh, nice.
just as FYI. There's
Okay.
one side which has dependencies. So this is basically a private function that is called by this element.
Mm-hmm.
And here you add all the dependencies you want.
Okay.
The one we're going to add, it's, let me just check, it's plug cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
And we want version 2.6. This is another cool trick from Elixir. If you
Okay.
do this with tilde, so
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying is give me approximately version 2.6, meaning that the minors will be handled by it. So any minor, it will actually update it for you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really good. The guys that thought of this are really
Yeah.
strong. And with that, we just need to do deps.get. It will fetch all the dependencies we need. And
Okay.
here we can see that we have plug cowboy, which is the one that basically interfaces with cowboy, which is here. Cowboy telemetry, it's basically a telemetry package that exists for cowboy, where it's emitting events, telemetry events for cowboy, like, I don't know, request arrived and received and whatsoever. So this basically is emitting events. We're not going to use that. Plug is the base for, it's that middleware that knows how to manage all the layers and connect
Mm-hmm.
everything up. And we'll see a better example of that later. This is just a helper for MIME types. Plug crypto, since there's some encryption related with Cowboy, kind of generation of that, this exists. Telemetry also comes out of the box because of Plug Cowboy. Cowlib, I can't remember what is. And Ranch, I think it's actually the web server that Cowboy kind of has really underneath. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the root of everything. Okay.
Ooh.
So now, if we have this, we basically are compiling all the dependencies, and we have an Elixir project running with our dependencies. Okay. Just
Nice.
leave it compiling.
Mm-hmm.
This is another important part. I think it's the Elixir is compiled,
Okay.
and just be aware of that because it's not interpreted, but it's dynamic. It's not a typed language. But yeah, here we have the Elixir project. So we're going to get out of that, and we're going to create a file called router. And here, if you use, this is another important thing we can talk about, which is extensions. So there's an extension called Elixir LS,
Okay.
which is kind of the official way of using it with
Mm-hmm.
VS Code. That basically gives this autocomplete, snippets, and a bunch of other useful things.
Okay.
So now that we have this, we're going to use plug router.
Mhm.
And this is basically the injecting and importing all the logic needed and functions into this plug router so we can do whatever endpoints have. But as you can see, we can navigate the code, and all of this is basically, we can see it even in the docs. So if we go into the project again, oh yeah, give me a second.
Mhm.
Yeah, I need to define a bunch of things here, I think. No routes defined. Yeah, it doesn't have any kind of route. We're going to do plug match, plug dispatch, and I go into that a bit in a second. We're going to do a matcher that basically catches everything, and we're going to send a 404 with an empty. Okay, now this should compile, and I'm going to show what I was mentioning.
Okay.
So if we are in our REPL now, if we do age plug.router, everything that appears in their docs, it's basically also accessible from the command line.
Nice.
And part of the proof of that is that, for example, since we are importing, this use basically is importing functions into our module, so this router module. So we know that they're functions from this plug router. So if we do, okay, let me see how the match actually works. You can see all the code for match and all the documentation for match. In our case, we want to see how to do a get. It's also doing that. So it says, okay, for a get, you need a path, the options, and the contents. Okay, so we're basically going to do that. We're going to try out a small hello world where we just say on our root, we want to send a response of 200 hello. That's it. All of this that you're seeing here, it's being brought by this guy.
Okay.
Again, I understand this is a bit of magic. Trust me, it's a bit better than going all in with Erlang. So here we need to embrace a bit the magic of it's coming from here.
Okay.
But again, if we actually look into the match function, wherever it is, I click the match. So whenever we do def match, it's basically injecting the connection into it, and it's doing all the dance we need for this pattern matching to happen. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
So if we open something on the side, it's still not working because there's one last step we need to do. So if we actually tried to, if I do this and try to curl it, we haven't defined any port, we haven't defined anything, so it fails. Okay. To actually do something, we need to tell it that I'm actually going to put this is not needed. So what we need here is to say, okay, look, we have your router, please start the process with the web server. And that's exactly what we're going to do. In our application, so this is the thing that is started when we do, when we basically start the application. That is defined. It's still not here. I'm going to add that. I'm actually going to be lazy on this one because it's always this. So in our application, I'm going to copy this. So yeah, disclaimer, this example was prepared beforehand and I just have it on the site in case something goes wrong on the live demo. So we're going to do that. And what this is saying is, look, my application starts the logger. So there's a logger included with Elixir out of the box, which is also good. The module that I want you to run as our first thing is this application module. Then we're going to our application module. I'm in the wrong spot. Wait. Sorry, my bad. We need to do an application module. And here, it's where we want to actually define the application we're going to start, which will start it will start the web server on the right port with that router as the main router, okay? So if you actually look into the docs of application, we can see the rules or whatever application expects you to have to basically start up the application. So in this docs, you'll find that you'll need a start function to basically have your own thing. So we'll do that. And on this start function, you want to say, okay, my children, which is basically the processes I want you to run, are plug.cowboy, which was one of our dependencies. You want to say that it's the schema HTTP. For now, if you wanted to do this in another way, you could say, okay, this is HTTPS and this can be passed through configs. Then we're going to do that our plug, entry plug, is a router. And for options, we want to say that please use port 4000. Then we're going to say that you want to do application dot start. No, sorry, let me remind myself. Because the bootstrapping is always really similar, and I tend to forget this kind of stuff. Okay, so it's not application, it's supervisor. Because this is one of the Elixir magics, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, it's expecting a logger. How much time? Fetchenv. Where are you expecting a fetchenv? Give me a second.
Sure thing. So,
okay. Does it really need a logger? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Again, live coding. Live coding is fun. It's always fun.
I know. The Democrats. The Democrats. So it's complaining that the logger is not found.
I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use the example I had because then we can evolve from here. It's much better than trying to do get step one. Okay.
Oh, but yeah. Nice.
Yeah, this is tricks. I knew that something would go wrong.
Yeah, you planned for it. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm always afraid that something goes wrong. But basically, if you look into the router, we have the same. We didn't deviate that much. What we did here, now that I know that this is working, I can go with more secure pace. Basically, we're saying that please start these children. We're just logging out. Look, we're going to start on port 4000, and we're saying supervisors start link, start these children.
Okay.
And whenever, this is one of the weird things about Elixir, which is the Beam, it works on the Beam VM, so it works with processes. And you can define it that when one process dies, how does it recover? So it has basically self-healing properties. You can say to it, look, if this router dies for some reason or this server dies for some reason, the server doesn't fully disappear. It basically has a strategy to say, okay, I'm going to reboot my process and I'm not going to send the server completely down. I'm not going to die completely. I'm going to start a new process. Nice. So this is one of the magics of Elixir. It's the fact that it works on the Beam. And I'm going to show you what I mean in a better and more visual way, which is, damn it, I don't have it. That's a shame. So if you do observer.start, what this does is, I'm going to show you it. So if you do this, I hope I can see. Yeah, you basically have a tree of the processes you've just started.
Okay.
And you'd see here the web server, okay? So this is basically how Elixir and the Beam works. Everything is a small process. Everything is a small entity that can be restarted, that can be reused, and can be kind of killed and brought back. And it has strategies on how to approach it. It's quite deep. And
Yeah.
again, it's one of the reasons why anyone kind of building anything in Elixir should probably go first with a non framework and then build from there, so they can understand how to build a supervision tree, what is needed, etc. And that's exactly what we did here. So in our code, it's not
Okay.
this one because this is the obsolete one. In
Mm-hmm.
our code, we're saying, look, my children processes is my web server. Please start them. If it dies, restart it immediately without any kind of magic. This is just a strategy, and call it the name of the process is the module itself. And this is used to check if it's alive, if it's dead, etc. So if we do news API.application, we have a process ID saying, okay, this one is alive. So this is basically just us setting up a supervision tree, which sounds really scary, but it isn't. It's just our virtual machine kind of handling everything for us. So, and usually this is just boilerplate if you want to go for the first time.
Okay.
So we probably went through the worst parts of Elixir
Yeah.
in the first go.
Yeah.
So we can move forward. And I didn't show you that it kind of actually works, where we do a curl to localhost 4000, and we just have a response saying Gaudi. Okay, so now we've matched with the route. That's it. We're done. We
Nice.
have a website running, and things are a bit better. Now, what can we do next? We can do a bit of better error management. So imagine that I, for some reason, try to send something that it doesn't know. This sends not found. But if I try to do, I think it's minus, no, this still works. But yeah, let's imagine that for some reason my route actually raises an exception. So something happened here and it's not working properly now. Oh, by the way, this is how you recompile on the REPL. You just type a recompile. It says, okay, I'm ready.
Nice.
And now it blows up.
Yeah.
If we actually look
Great.
at the response of the curl, it's a 500. So it's not being properly managed. It just blows up without a proper way of handling. So we're going to have a way to properly handle that, which also comes with plug cowboy, which is plug dot error handler. And then we just need to define a small handle error function that has the connection and the error that blew up. We're still going to send a 500. So we're informing the user that something went wrong. And for now, we can actually do something that no one should do, but we can do this.
Okay.
So this is basically, I'm going too far ahead. Let's go step by step before I do this.
Okay.
So this is a function that we need to say, look, this is the implementation plug.error handler. So the compiler knows this is it. We're going to ignore this for now. We're going to recompile, handle errors. So even the compiler is telling me, look, be careful, because you're saying you gave me a hint. They're still trying to implement something from error handler. And basically this defines the way to catch that error. And if we do it this way, we can actually, I was mentioning that we can inspect the error itself. So for example, if we do this, instead of just blowing up and be uncontrolled, what we can do is basically have a way to explore that error.
Okay.
And with this information, we can basically say to it, okay, let's use pattern matching, which is one of the selling points of Elixir.
Okay.
As you can see, the signature is similar. It's the same function name. Everything is similar until we reach this point. So instead of receiving the error, what we're doing is pattern matching. We're saying that if the argument received is a map that contains a key that has this value,
okay,
you're going to run this code instead of this one.
Nice.
And this is extremely powerful. We're going to go a bit more into that a bit later. But for example, if I do this and I want to return a 200, for example, it will still say it's an exception because the error handler still says something is weird here. But our answer is 200 okay.
Yeah.
So basically we're running this code instead of this one. And this is the power of pattern matching. It really, you can do a lot of it. And we're going to dive a bit more into that a bit later. Okay?
Yeah.
So now we're doing error handling, and we have a router, and we have a better way of handling errors. So we have the basis for our API. Now we're going to work with our database. So here I have Docker Compose running. Sorry, not Docker Compose, a Postgres instance running on Docker. And we're going to our mix. And let me see if I'm still live. I am. We're going to add Ecto.
Okay.
Ecto is a DSL for database management and interaction and everything. It's the way to go when you want to use databases in Elixir. This is the way to go. Lower than this, you're basically just calling SQL. You could do it, and we're going to use part of that dependency, but we're going to use it as a connector for us. So Postgres, which is our friend that does 16. Okay. So this one is that abstraction layer that does everything for us in terms of connecting to the database and giving a good DSL to do queries. Actually, this one is the one that, this one, if I'm not mistaken, is the one that, no, this one doesn't have the queries. This is just a way of, it's kind of a backend for SQL stuff that then you can work with MySQL, Postgres, and I think MariaDB. And it connects to a backend, which in our case will be Postgres, which is the client lib that actually talks with Postgres. Okay. And coming from a Ruby pass, I'm really happy with this one because I don't need to install Postgres on my machine. It just uses all the underlying protocols to actually do stuff, which I'm really happy with. Whenever we add dependencies, we actually need to get out of the REPL. We need to do mixdeps get. It fetches our dependencies, which is good. We can go back to the REPL now. No, we can't because there's another thing we need to do. Okay. As I mentioned before, the other thing that Elixir offers out of the box is config management. So you can have configs directly here. We just say that we import a config, which is native to Mix. And we're going to say, we're going to inform how Ecto needs to work. So in our scenario, we just need to say, let me just remind myself. I have some notes on my side. Again, no second monitor, but notes. I have config news API, where we're saying that our Ecto repo is a module we're going to call repo. And we're also going to say that news API as a database. And let me actually, I'll be lazy. No, I'm not going to be lazy. We're actually going to do this way.
Okay.
Because we're going to say this. I think my notes are wrong. That's why I'm pretty sure that we'll need to go there, but it's fine. We'll get there.
Okay.
Postgres, password, Postgres. So this is just, I just added this as the default everything. So hostname, I think just localhost. Okay. So again, you saw the formatter working automatically. It basically fixes all your lines for you, and it just makes your code out of the box prettier. Now we're going to do this, which is our repository. This is basically a module that says, how does it connect to the database? Okay.
Yeah.
And for this one, we just need to say that this module, you'll use ecto.repo. OTP app, it's the name of our application. So we're going to say that in our case, it's news API. And the adapter we want to use is ecto.adapters.postgres. Let me check where it's complaining. Wait, we can actually do compile. Probably way faster. Missing adapter because I mistyped.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad. Yeah, this is why I really like to have a compiler. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
So we can do this. Oh no, we need another thing. We need to tell our application that we now have a new child. We have a new thing we want our application to control. We have a web server and we have a repository. So in our application, we need to tell it that it has a repo. It's complaining because let's go up. It's good that we're looking into this. So this is the process failing multiple times and showing the why and key database not found. So here, this is our config. I told you that something would be wrong. I think I need to say that. I told you.
Yeah.
I already know. I know myself.
It's fine. We'll do this sometime. You know.
I'm going to do the lazy way again. I prefer to have git reset. It's better to have always have a second way of fixing stuff.
Okay.
So yeah. Exact repo not loaded, could not be found. And this is because check. Oh, sorry, step 3. And yeah, because we're already on this step, not the other one. Sorry again.
That's fine.
Why are you complaining? Now we're having a lesson of
Gits.
of Git.
Yeah, Gits.
It's always fun. I'm going to be lazy with it again, which is you're complaining that I have too much stuff, so I'm going to delete all the stuff you're talking about. Okay, remove minus F config. Okay, yes. Okay. Again, always be lazy.
Yeah, I like it.
No, not git step. Git get step 3. Okay. So the error probably is, yeah, the error was here where I need to say that the configuration for the module, for this module, comes from this config file, which is here. So this was the error. But again, rather have something working than trying to debug too much. So, but yeah, that's the idea. And this, again, it's really bootstrap. This is usually always, you're going to do it always like this. So every tutorial you find, it's like this. But again, to be specific on what's happening, we're saying that we're going to use Ecto. The Ecto repositories we're going to use, it's called this. So this is the module we have here. It will then know that it needs to use these options. We're saying, okay, you're going to use Ecto repo for the OTP app news API, which is defined here and also defined on our mix ESX. So it's the name of our project. And we're going to say to it, you're going to use Postgres for this effect. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We go back to our application and we say to it, look, I want to start this repository. And it connects to the database and it's done. So we now have access to our Postgres. Okay.
Okay.
One of the things, now that we have this, if we do mix help, which is basically to detail all the mix commands you can do, we'll find a bunch of things here for Ecto. So this is a bunch of CLI commands you can use to do specific things. We could have used, for example, mix ectogen repo, where it does all of this for you. But we're going to do a migration.
Okay.
We're going to do a migration so we can tell the which entities we're going to create. So we're going to do mix ecto dot migration, and we're going to add user. And it just creates a file with what we need.
Okay.
And actually, let me check one thing. Yeah, we already had it here. But yeah. Yeah, since we went the shortcut way, I have a lot of code. I'm actually going to delete this one. So spoiler alert. So we're going to add users, and this is what a usual migration looks like in Elixir. You basically say to it, create a table, the name users, and these are the fields you want to add. Okay,
Yeah.
we're just going to have the name, and we're going to have a token that will be encoded in the database, so it's a bit more secure. And then we would do a new migration exactly the same way, where we do add topic, and it just generates the code for you. And that would just be create a table topic, where I have an entity, a column called user ID that references the table users.
Okay.
And add a topic with a string, and that's it. Then we have create unique index. So imagine that I'm a user and I want to check what's happening with Twitter. I don't know, Twitter news. Then if I add multiple Twitter topics,
Yeah.
I want it to file, so I don't have, I don't know, 10 Twitter topics with the same name. I just want one. So we're basically doing that. We're just creating an index, a complex index, saying that each user should only have one topic. That's it. That's our model for the moment.
Yeah.
Then we're going to create the models themselves. So here I'm going to call it news API for now. So a folder called news API. We can do topic.ex and user.ex. Def module to do our things. And we need to define that this uses ectoschema. So ectoschema is the way you define, or you tell Elixir this as a specific structure, and that structure is defined with schema. Again, this might feel like a lot of magic, and it is a bit of magic, but lower than this, you'd be handling Postgres SQL calls. So I wanted to avoid that as an example. And I just want to focus on giving something that, well, actually does something.
Okay.
So we're going to say that it's a name of type string. And we have a token of type string. And we also have many topics. So, and this will be of type newsapi.topic, which is something we haven't built yet. So we're going back here, and we're going to say that our use ectoschema as a schema for topics that has a field topic, it's string, and belongs to a user, which is of type newsapi.user. Check. Is it belongs to? Yeah. Let's see if everything compiles, just to be extra sure. Yeah, everything compiles. And again, what we've done now is basically set up the entities that will be saved and fetched from the database. Okay?
Yeah.
Now we can do mix ecto.migrate. And this runs our migrations as we wanted to. So now in our database, we have everything that we need. And if we actually go into our code, we can do newsapi.repo, and I can fetch all newsapi, our entity. So it basically says that there's nothing here at the moment.
Okay.
But here we're basically saying the repo, we're creating the repo for all the entries that are represented by this entity. So this is us talking with our database. We're going to do the next step, which is actually creating a user. How do I create a user? Ecto has a really cool trick, which is change sets. Change sets are ways for you to basically check if what you're doing, when you're creating an entity or modifying it or whatever, if it's valid or not before even going to the database. So this is a concept that Ecto uses extremely well, and you can apply multiple change set rules and do a lot of things with it. We're not going to use anything fancy. We're just checking if the types received are correct, and that's it. So at least for the user, we're just going to use that one, which means that whenever I create a new user, I'm going to receive the name and the token, because we need to return the token at some point. I'm going to do cast of an empty version of newsapi.user. So basically we're saying that we're instantiating an empty element of this structure, of this entity. And we're saying that I want you to cast, let me check. Yeah, we received the parameters here. So I'm going to do, so this is the map representation. So this is a map. We're saying that name is name, token is token. Receive the params, and we want to cast name and params, name and token. And what this does is newsapi.user.new, and I'm going to say that I'm a potato and my token is potato. It basically tells that, yeah, you're passing me the right information. And that way, the user, before even going to the database, he already has some kind of guarantee. Because if, for example, if I do this, it tells me, look, it's not valid, the error is in a token, it's an invalid type, it should be a string. So basically, out of the box, without going to the database, we're already saving a lot of time there, and it's validating the change set. But now that we have this, we can even say to our repo, so newsapi, we can insert this change set directly, and it created an entry in our user table. So now we have one user, and this is how you create it. You basically say to it, look, here's the change set, check if it's valid. If it's not valid, it doesn't even talk with the API, with the database. If it's valid, try it. So we're going to do the same for, we're going to be, again, lazy. That's important. Every programmer should be lazy. And we're going to delete this. We're going to delete, we're just going to take this one. We want a new topic. So for our new topic, we need to say that it needs to be a user here. And we're going to say that we want to extract the ID. And I'm going to explain that a bit better, don't worry. We want user ID to be ID, and we want topic to be topic. We're going to say to cast user ID, and we want to cast topic. So user struct, yeah, because here it needs to be a newsapi.user. Okay, so what's happening here? This shenanigan is again pattern matching. So here we're using again pattern matching to extract the ID from a given user. So let's imagine here, I'm going to get this user, again, I'm using pattern matching again here, where I'm saying from the list of users, get me the first one. So again, it's weird. We'll go a bit more into detail a bit later, but this is how you do pattern matching.
Okay.
So you do muse API dot, oh, I need to recompile, sorry. Recompile, muse API dot topic dot new. And we're saying, look, here's a user and I want Tesla because it's all the rage. And it's saying to me, look, something is wrong, it's here. Recompile. Yeah. And it's saying, okay, look, create a new topic where my topic is Tesla. The user ID associated with this change is user ID 1. So the one I've provided it, which is this one. But it's extracting from this structure the ID directly. You could do this in another way, which would be, let's imagine like this. And you could do user.id. But by using pattern matching here, you're basically creating another layer of security, because if I try to pass a string here, it basically tells me I have no function that understands that. I
Nice.
don't understand what you're requesting me. I just know how to work with this. If you give me an entity called user of this specific module, then I'll be able to extract the ID. Otherwise, I have no clue what you're asking me. So this is an extra layer of defense that you get for free on with Elixir, which already solves a lot of errors. This, by you having this, if you have a young team, there's a lot of code a lot of errors that you'll prevent. But yeah,
Nice.
basically now we have the functions we need to actually go to our router and say that let's not raise potato anymore. And we're going to say that on post, on my root element, no, not port, post, I want to do a muse API.user.new. We're going to do this, give me a second. Oh, I need another thing. We're going to be lazy or not? No, we're not going to be lazy. So we need to generate a token. So token is acto.uid.generate. So this is another nice thing that Acto does, which is generate a UID. It does access to a new UID library and just generates UIDs version 4. I think there's other versions it supports, but at least Gen 4 we have it. For now, we're going to leave that empty. The other thing we need to do is extract the our user. I actually think I need to do one thing. So we're going to be lazy again, sorry. I remember that I don't know this by heart. So git step 4. Yeah. Sorry again for being lazy.
That's fine.
But what we did was give it a JSON decoder. So let's actually backtrack a bit. I'm going to clean up a bit our workstation, and we're going to this step by step. What I did was, we're going to add our JSON library. So it's called JSON. This is the most common one to be used, but there are others. But this one is kind of the common one. We're going to use another plug where we're saying, after you match something, you're going to parse the body of that request. And you're going to use JSON as your decoder. And by doing that, we actually have what we need to create our user. Let me actually go through this afterwards. Oh, no, we can do this. So, and what it does is, inside the connection, it creates an entry called body params. We're extracting from that body params and pattern matching it to get the name of the user.
Yeah.
We're generating the token as mentioned before, and we're just saying, look, please create me a new user. And then we do, okay, on our connection, put the response type with JSON, just to be extra secure on the, well, to be nice to your users. please always tell it it's a JSON type, and we're going to encode the response that, okay, I'm going to give you back the token so you can do requests to us, basically. So now, if I go, oh, now I'm alone?
No, I'm still here.
No. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I see it.
I'm afraid. Now I'm afraid.
No, don't be. Don't be.
If
I'm
I do a
here.
curl with
Okay.
a post, it creates a new user, and that's it. And
Nice.
now we can use this token as our bearer token. The other thing that so before we had this, I'm going to show to you. Before we had token, we had this. But saving this to the database is dangerous. Any kind of leak, you're done. And other than that, you're basically saving, passwords
Mm-hmm.
in plain text in our database. So we're going
Yeah.
to do an extra quick step, which shows how complete the Elixir standard library is, which is I'm just going to encode them in 64. It's not the best way, but it's there. So it's something you should be aware that you can encode directly to base 64. Again, not the secure way to do it, but there's other ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And Elixir gives it all.
Cool.
We're going to create our change set based on that, and we're going to insert it directly here. So we're basically doing all the flow of I'm creating a new entry.
Mm-hmm.
And that entry, as you can see, it's called Filipe, and it saves the password. Again, this is not secure, but it shows that we have encoding here. You could have something else here like HMAC or some other algorithm. So, but just be aware of that. This is don't ever use base64 to just save stuff. Okay, but that's other stories. Now, by having this, what I want to do next is a put endpoint, and that put endpoint will be for the topic. So whenever this user adds a topic, I want to check it out. And to do that, let's remove this code, and let's also remove this one. I'm going to just send an empty response for now. And I'm going to show you what I'm trying to do, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It complains about this. Okay, so I'm going to recompile, and if I do a put, oh, I need that's annoying. I'm going to do this. Yeah, I need to give it the correct bearer token.
Mm-hmm.
So here, I'm going to delete all of this. And it blew up because of, oh yeah, because I didn't do what? Okay, it's this. Sorry for that. But yeah, now I'm saying that for my put request, I want to fetch, I want to have it a topic parameter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you actually check params or path params, you
Okay.
can actually see, okay, from my path, I have a topic. So what we can do here is pattern match against it. So topic, I can do path params. And if we do inspect and recompile, we actually get our output. We basically see, okay, we have Tesla. Since we have Tesla, the other thing we can do is here we can do get by token, where we do the same dance of we do a base encode 64 of a token, and we say this, and then we do news api.repo.get by. We say to it that I want to fetch a news API user. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just watching
Okay.
you go.
Sorry, we need to talk from time to time because again, since we've
Oh
already
yeah,
had a
that
small
is
mishap.
true. So I have a question because I'm kind of interested.
Hmm.
So when you made the token, which is a UID, right, and you
Yeah,
encode it with um base
by
64, right?
64.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you? What's are you using a sort of middleware to check for it in the header, or is that being handled under the hood somehow?
That's something we're going to do next. So
Okay,
we're
okay.
going to do it by hand. I'm going
Oh,
to show you how to do that by hand.
oh, cool. But that's interesting.
And it's actually quite easy, so you'll see. And
Okay.
again, we'll use the power of pattern matching to achieve it, which is the other advantage. So in this API.topic.new, we're going to do the news API.user.get. I'm going to hide this. But one of the things we have, as you can see here, we have the request headers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what we can say is, give me a second. Where was it? Oh God, again.
It's okay.
Because if I hate not having two monitors, then it would be way easier. Let me
Yes, it
check.
will be.
Yeah,
It makes life easy. You might have as many
yeah,
monitors as you want.
it's so annoying.
Mhm.
Where was it? To utils dot. There's a way to get the I'm going to. I don't know. Where
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a bit sensitive. We're already here for 1 hour, so I don't want to take more of your time.
Yeah, that's fine. We
So,
just keep going at your pace. This is interesting stuff
okay,
because
okay.
yeah, so I noticed we have to do a little bit of setup before we get into the real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It requires a bit of setup, and
Okay.
that's probably it's boilerplate,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that much. It's just explaining everything plus Elixir. It's just a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but for example, here again we have the what we had was this post. So here we are doing the create user.
Okay.
We have the put. So this just fetches you, does what we were doing, and that is being handled. Oh, this is already a lot. I'm going to delete some code so it's a bit more straightforward and
Mm-hmm.
ignore some nice things I had here, which is this. I'm going to ignore this for now. And here I'm going to wrap everything in another way, which is like this. Again, sorry, I'm going through the code a bit too fast, but I'm going to explain everything now. So,
Yeah, sure.
whew,
Okay.
recompile everything, and again, going a bit backtracking a bit. There's a helper for you to get the request header information. Okay, so this function basically goes into the connection. So the structure that tells you what's within a request, and you want to request. Okay, I want authorization. This is the token, the element I want from my request. So if we
Okay.
do this and we do our put, it's this one, you'll see that our request header authorization as a
Okay.
list with a string called bearer and the token itself. So again, here you'd have your token, then would be age mapped on our database. But again, ignoring that step, what we're going to do is use case. Case, it's an overpowered if, technically. So
Okay.
what we're going to do, imagine that you wanted to do something like, I'm actually going to try this. Let me give you a quick example why this is really powerful. I'm going to get a response error here. So let's imagine that your users are not really versed on API usage and they don't know that bearer needs to be before. This basically pattern matches the value, telling me that if a user sends me that specific format without the bearer token, if I do this, it shows me this error instead of doing this code, or instead of showing me this one. And why is it doing this? Why is it failing to fetch here? Why is it falling into this one and not falling into this line of code? So again, using pattern matching, I'm saying to it, from this element, whatever the output is, it's from here, please check me if it's a list with a single entry. From that list, I know that I have a string that starts with bearer token and a space, and I want to extract the string in front of it, which is the token itself.
Okay.
It's quite a lot, I know, but
yes, it is.
let's do that. Yeah, it's a lot. Let's do that step by step. So imagine that you have this. The output of get request header, it's this. It's a list. So it basically does this. And our pattern matching is saying, look, if the response is a list, get me the first element, check if it has bearer in front of it, and if it has it, save this into my token variable. So it's doing all of those steps within this line of code.
Wow.
If we wanted to do this, well, the old way, it would be something like this. So imagine that we have, token would be good enough. We would need to do from our token, get me the head of the token. So we would be extracting that list. Then we would need to say string dot replace, for example, and we would say that if you find bearer, replace it with this, and this would be our token. But again, this is really error prone. You'd start to have potential edge cases here and there. So this saves everything and saves a lot of code. And we extract that token. We then fetch the user based on that token, where the only thing we're doing is get me the token. Get me a user. This is also really, I'm going to do this, so it's a bit more readable. Get me a user from the repo based on the token, and preload. It's basically, I'm going to remove this for now so we have proper pane. So if we do this and we put Twitter, for example, not found. Why is it not found? Okay, yeah, because I still have this error here. If we do this, it adds a new topic called Twitter. But if I try to fetch it, I'm actually going to the database itself to show you this. So if we do newsapi.repo.wall from newsapi.user, if we do this, it's saying that it's giving this element topics. It's an act to association, that it's not loaded. This is a way Ecto found to avoid a lot of n+1. It only loads the information that you requested. So this eliminates a lot of n+1 issues where you just try to load everything in the object and it would just call lists of lists of lists of lists and tables and tables and tables, and it would just call things till the end of time. So you need to be specific if you want. No, it's fine. Sorry. It needs to be specific. You need to be specific on what you want to fetch. And that's basically what we're saying here. If you're trying to get a user by a subject, give me that user and also load the topics for that user. You need to be really specific on Ecto on what you want to fetch to avoid a lot of the pains that other APIs bring by doing everything automagically. This way, you need to be really specific. And now we have our put, we have our post. I'm going to get the information of our get, which is our fetch user. in a non-fancy way, because that's already an abstraction we have. So I'm going to remove this. That's fine. Yeah. So here we're going to basically do the same code. So from our get request, we're going to call it the me endpoint. And I'm going to recompile. And yeah, it's failing because I need this. And we'll have our default response of not found, because that's the way you should answer if the token is invalid. Most of the time, it's just saying that it doesn't exist. And that's it. Now we have our, we have our me endpoint. And we just need to say to it that it's a get request. So if we do this,
Okay.
what we're doing is get me the user by the token again, send a response with that user encoded. Now there's something we didn't go through, which is how do we tell what's going in the user element? If I do this, it will actually throw me an error saying that it doesn't know how to send that entity. You also need to be specific on what your reply will look like. This is done for security. For example, I don't want to send the token back. Otherwise, that's dangerous. You could do it, but it's dangerous.
Yes,
so
it
JSON
is.
comes with a really nice helper, which is this derive, where you say, okay, for the JSON encoder, I want you to only send this information, the name and the topics, and that's it.
Yes.
That's all the code you need to kind of, okay, this is my JSON response, you're ready. And in our topic, we're going to do the same, where we say, okay, just give me the topic name, and that's it. I don't want anything else. And by having that, JSON is smart enough to basically only give me that information. And here is the response. I can even pipe it to JQ, so it's a bit more readable. And we have it here. Just what are the topics, this and this, done. Now, we have a get, a post, a put. What would we need to do delete? Well, something really similar to all of this. Just, again, be lazy, copy paste, get the topic, and instead of a new, we can create a function called delete, where we say def delete token and the topic. We can do, and I'm in the wrong place. I want this on the topic. I want to do news api.repo.1 because there's only one entry.
Okay.
We can even do get by. I want to fetch a news API topic, and I want it to fetch by the token. No, I don't. I can do this. I'm going to do this the other way. So I'm going to fetch the user because it's a bit easier. User. I'm going to get it by token. So, and since the get has all the topics, I can do topics. So here I have all the topics. Can actually test this as we go. This is one of the advantages of REPL-driven development. We say to it that Tesla, and I want to before localhost -x delete. It's fine. 64. And delete. It's receiving the user directly. Okay, that's even better because now we can do user. We don't need to do the get. That's fine. We compile. We can do the delete. And from here, we want to check what's the topic with this name. So we're going to use enum.find. So this is another nice thing about Elixir. It has a module called enum out of the box that does a lot of mapping functions, reduce functions, find functions, filter functions. It just does a lot of it. So I'm going to do a function where I have a topic, and I'm going to check if topic.topic, not the best name, but still, it's equal to the topic we received. I'm going to change a bit here the variables. That's fine. Okay. This will actually result in the topic we want to delete. And if we recompile, we can check that this is the topic we want to delete. We just want to delete the Tesla. So to achieve it, we can tell it, okay, you found one. So you're going to do use api.repo.delete. And this thing, by the way, I'm kind of using it without telling, this is a pipe. Okay. So basically the output of this comes as the first argument here. The output of this comes as the first argument here. Okay. And it's also really nice sugar syntax to kind of keep the code clean. And yeah, now I found it, I've deleted, and it's done. We no longer have interest in Tesla. So now we have that delete endpoint. Again, after the boilerplate is done-ish, it's not that difficult to kind of compile more and more on top of it. So here, yeah. So now we have the delete endpoint. We have a get to check my user. We have a put to put a new topic. We have a delete to delete a new topic. Let's do the bread and butter of this API, which is this, the do endpoint, which will do, again, check for the buried token, as we did with the other endpoints. We can do some sugar syntax around this to make it so we don't repeat this code all the time, but we're going to avoid that for now in interest of time. We're going to also do, again, a lot of copy pasting because life is like that. We're going to get the user. We're going to do a news API topic fetch, for example, and we're going to give it the user. This will be the headlines. And we're going to respond with the headlines here. Now we're going to build our fetch topic, def fetch. We'll receive the user. We're going to do exactly the same as here. And we're going to use the same powers of mapping, where we say from my topic, I want to have topic.topic. And I can even show you something special. So this one, Elixir now actually includes a debugger. So if you do this, it's not the delete endpoint, sorry. It's, let's actually check this one. So yeah, you now have an endpoint, a debugger where you can check, okay, what's my user? And it tells you what's the user. You can do the user.topics. It basically stopped our request and it's trying to fetch information about it. So yeah, it includes a debugger, so this is also useful. But for now, we're going to avoid it because now I need to recompile, sorry. Because now we kind of want to go through the code. So now we have a subject called Twitter. And what we want to do is request. We want to do a request to our API. So we're going to have, where is it? Let me just give me a second. We're going to add rec to our code, and we're going to use version 0.0.3, and this is fine. We're going to exit because we need to exit because of a new dependency. Mix deps.get. And now we need to do the request. For our request, we still need to prepare something, which is the credentials for the API. We're going to use newsapi.org.
Okay.
And as you can see, it needs an API key to actually fetch anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to import config. And we're going to say from our config, I want you to use news API token. And we're going to fetch from our environment. This is another good thing about Elixir. You also have I'm going to do this. I'll delete the token afterwards. Again, don't show your private tokens in a stream.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has a way to fetch from system. I've worked with languages where even this was a dependency. You don't need this dependency for in this use case.
Yeah.
Another important element here is you might have noticed that I'm not using config.exs. I'm using runtime.exs. This is another convention from Elixir, where anything inside config, this config is done in compile time.
Okay.
And it's used during compile time. But this one is done when the application loads.
Okay.
And there's this distinction needs to exist so that during your compilation steps, you can define how your modules are loaded, what they are doing, what they will use, the adapters. For example, in this one, we're saying, look, my repos are this is my information. So this database information would actually live much better in our runtime config. And basically, this is how you define everything for runtime startup. This is for compilation, this is for runtime. And this separation might seem a bit weird, but it's really useful because then your compiler only compiles when it's needed. It only compiles with the information, well, without temporary information, and runtime is the thing that handles all that temporary information. So this is a really powerful abstraction. Now that we have this, let me just be sure that compiles. Okay, it compiles. We can go back to our topic. And now that we have that in the options, we can say from our application, what was it? Applications. Oh, don't tell me I need to go back to my cheating mode. Okay. We're actually in step 8, so I'm going to do that. So again, in interest of time. Runtime. Okay. Yeah, we have the delete and okay, fetching. I'm going to step back so we can do that. I actually forgot already. Application.fetchenv. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. So ignore all of that code. And here I'm actually doing something different for the delete. I can explain that afterwards. So I'm going to hide it for a bit. So we're going to do a fetch for user. User.topics. So yeah, this is how I can fetch from my runtime config. I deleted the file. Yeah, live coding, always fun.
It is fun.
It's always like this. It's always like this. I'm glad at least I've prepared something. Otherwise, I'd be
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, that's great
So,
backup there.
oh yeah, always have backup.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever trust your that everything will work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Client and the token is system.fetch env of news API token. Again, we're going to move this here also because it makes more sense to be here because it's dynamic information to be loaded during runtime.
Yeah.
And here we're going to say that news API token. Okay, cool. I'm going back here because I added something I don't need, which is this. So yeah, what we're doing now is saying from my config files
Mm-hmm.
here, please fetch me the token from my news API for my news API application.
Okay.
This is how config files are structured. We're basically saying, okay, for my application, this is a token. And you could have more things here. This becomes a list and you can do whatever you want here. But for now, we just need this one. So, oh God, now that we have this, we're going to just do a quick copy paste because, again, be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have this so we can use it later. From our user topics, we wanted to get only, for each topic, we want to get topic.topic. This creates a list of named topics, basically what we're going to use on our query. And if we actually try that out, I need to get out and get in. And if I try to do, because it's not here, I need to do this. 0.3. And this. Next steps get. Okay.
Right.
But from our curl, we now have, this is the me endpoint still. So if I go to the router, oh God, I forgot that this is all like this. It's fine. We'll find a
Okay.
way. So handle fetch user, I'm going to again copy paste this here. Instead of this fetch user, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this code again. What to give you, well, actually, let's keep it like this. So what I did here was just find a way to have things a bit more organized, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Since we were always repeating this code, we were always repeating case, get request header, get me the token, etc. What I'm doing is passing a function. So I'm giving it a function, so it's called with connection and the token.
Okay.
So whenever a success happens, it's calling an anonymous function. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm basically saying to it, look, whenever you go through handle bearer token, here's the con, here's the function you're going to run with connection and token. And then I have a function for each one of them where I do that, basically. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a magic. It's kind of just a quicker way of not repeating this code always and just having everything a bit more organized. So we now have a fetch topics, which is our root. We're going to check that request. We're getting our user. We're getting the topics for that user. So we should be okay now. Again, sorry for the chaos.
That's fine.
mm.map with
Put you in
2
place.
is not the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's fun. It's fun when it's chaotic. And why are you complaining? And none. Yeah, and none. So that's again the usual kind of situation. And yeah, now we have Twitter appearing as our topic. And we're going to do enum dot map again, where for each name or each topic, we're going to use request. We're going to do a get, and we're saying that we want some string interpolation, so our life is not as difficult. So we want, let's remove the from and the sort by. Yeah, sort by could be here. That's fine. So let's remove the from. So, and here we just want the headlines. And now comes the other good thing, which is string interpolation. So JavaScript is probably the first time I've seen string interpolation, and I never went back. And here we just say that our variable name will be posted here, and our news token, I'm going to call it news token so it's not as confusing. Our news token is here.
Okay.
So let's see what this returns. Perfect, an error, as expected. No, this is actually expected. So what's happening here is request the library itself as a really specific structure, okay? So since we didn't define a way for this entity to be replied by our database, it's blowing up. So what we need to do, it's actually giving server error, perfect. So here we can do body.
It got
Let's
a
see what
4 4.
happens. The resource you're looking might have been removed. It's because I've probably butchered this. So let's actually check the API, documentation, top headlines, and yeah, I thought so. It's me. It's user error, not API error.
That's fine.
Recompile, and yeah, now we actually have news appearing.
Oh,
but we don't want everything, and we can do some other fancy stuff like we know that this is the body of the response, and what we can do is for this specific name, so for this entry, we want to actually do enum.map on this body. So body will be a list of topics. So a list of news.
Okay.
So let's call it all news. And for each news, I should have called it headline, but that's fine. We'll get the title, for example. And that's the only thing we want for now. Okay? So we recompile. Again, this is where REPL shines. It's just way easier for me to just keep trying, and keep changing things and just recompiling. Doesn't have get articles, content. Okay. So you don't know how to use this. What was actually the structure we have here? Let me check. Recompile. So got it. So give me just 1 second again. News. I'm going to check the full body so it's a bit easier for us to think of what's happening. Actually, you can use the response. So this is the structure that it's being sent back. Okay, it's this one. So it's a map. Okay. Now I know it. Okay. Because I think I need this. I forgot to recompile. Okay, that was stupid. Okay. So now we actually have a list. Sorry, my bad. So here we do in the enum.map all over this one. So news, and we here do news and title. I think this will work. Let me recheck, compile again. works. And now the other thing we can do is say to him, I want you to return me this in a map, where I give it the name of the subject. So this is topic name. I'm going to actually change this so it's a bit easier for people to understand. And this is a tuple in Elixir. Tuples are also something that also exists in Erlang. It's basically just a two. Imagine it as a fixed size array of two. And by giving this, you can actually make enum smart enough to basically go into a map. So this is basically doing a transformation of, for each topic, I have all these news, their titles, and I'm going to insert that into a map. So if you do this, now our function actually does something a bit more user-friendly, where it says, okay, for Twitter, this is the list of titles. And if we do a put of Tesla, we fetch it, and now we have Twitter and Tesla. So this is just a way of make everything a bit simpler on the response side. And yeah, we kind of achieved everything we proposed to with a lot of bumpy roads.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but we did. Yeah,
we did.
it
I'm
wasn't
still
easy,
blaming
but we're here.
the lack of second. No, sorry. I'm still blaming the lack of second monitor, because then it would be much easier than a small notebook.
Yeah.
But yeah, big thing to mention is the fact that take your time, because Elixir is, again, has a lot of things. It has pattern matching. It has a lot of elements to it, and again, they feel like magic. They're not. And for example, we can even do small optimizations to give you that example here. We don't need to do topic.topic. We could do from our news API topic, which is the function that we actually have here. We could say that, please get me the topic. And this still would work. So you're basically, again, pattern matching against this structure. All structures are mapped, so you can even remove this. So you kind of can construct easier and easier code. This doesn't actually need to be here. You could even do this. So you could start to really, really kind of evolve your code to be cleaner. So now since we're extracting directly from the map, we can say, okay, then I don't need that enum.map. I'm going directly to do the query here. And if you recompile, it still works, I hope. Yeah. So
Yeah.
pattern matching is a beast of a thing. It's really useful. That's one of the things you should really learn with Elixir. It's pattern matching. Another one is enum map. Anything within enum, and we can actually check our REPL for that. For example, as you can see, I'm even going to do something else since we're already done with our goal. Enum module has a lot of things, all, any, whatever. And let's imagine you want to see what happens with all. You have the age option, where you can see in the REPL itself how you can use all. So you don't even need to jump out of your development environment to actually do stuff. And this also applies to the libraries you're going to use, because even then, the community is really good at this, which is everything is really well documented. So even your libraries, let's imagine you don't know how to use your repository. So you go newsapi.repo.all. Okay, cool. And it gives you how to do that. And you can do one. Again, with Elixir, take your time, use the documentation. It's really strong. There's a lot of things I've shown that feels like magic. They're not. Even the Acto stuff, for example, the things we've used here to define the schema, they're not doing any kind of magic. They're just giving, I should be able to dive. They actually explain what's happening in all the documentation, but in reality, what they're doing is something similar to this, def struct. So you could define all of this logic. You could do it here also, where you have a topic. It's basically doing this for you. So it's doing a lot of nice things for you out of the box. and it knows how to use that stuff. But at least for the Postgres stuff, I highly advise you to check Ecto.
Mhm.
For the API side, so handle server, the request server, etc., I really advise you to check uh, Plug Cowboy. And again, it's a little bit of boilerplate, not much. Our router ended up being a bit more complex because of the management of the bearer token. But again, it's not much code that you need to actually input.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, overall, that's basically it. With Elixir, learn pattern matching. It will be one of your biggest friends. Learn Ecto, because it's not that difficult in terms of what's doing, and it enables you to do really cool stuff. Um, and this is probably the weirdest part, which is it's a shame I don't have the observer, but the supervision tree, it's really one of the weirdest parts for a lot of people. Uh, but after you think about it, it's not that difficult. Again, it's a question of everything is a process. Everything is just a small entity that can be killed and resumed,
Mhm.
and it becomes quite good for your mental model to think about it. And
Mm.
again, thank you again for the patience, and sorry for
Yeah.
the bumpy road to
Yeah.
get to where we are.
Yeah, it's fine. The syntax of Elixir, coming from a C-like JavaScript style,
Yeah.
it was a little bit trippy, but yeah, I did follow along. Yeah, it was good. So I like the debugging tooling you had, and the REPL, the testing, and yeah, and the Ecto for working with databases was really fun. Yeah, so definitely, I think this is a loaded session, and the folks working with Alexa will definitely appreciate, like you showing, building an API without a framework, using Cowboy and every other thing we used. Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
putting.
thank you. And
Yeah.
again, really sorry for the bumpy road. And I actually have a repository with all the code for anyone that wants to go through with it a bit in a slower pace. I'm also available on Twitter. If anyone has any question, please do ping it, because I know that at least for newcomers,
Mhm.
it's a really tricky language to start. You kind of
Yeah.
need some basis to actually proceed. It's not a good first language. It's a bit my take. It's not an easy first language.
Mhm.
There's some concepts you'd need to learn, but again, it's a question of probably 1 day or two of studying, and you should be able to kind of go over that bumpy road.
Yeah, sure thing. So that's amazing. Yeah. So you said we could reach you on Twitter. So
Yeah,
what's your handle on Twitter?
at Filipe Cabaço, everything together.
Okay, good, good. So I would link that in the description. Do you have anything else you're
Mhm.
going to say before we wrap up? Whatever to plug, whatever you want to share with us before we call it for this session?
So, if I have anything to share, is again,
Hmm.
um, don't be scared by things.
Hmm.
Everything takes time. Everything needs preparation. Even this talk, I've worked with Elixir for I don't know how many years, and even I don't remember some of the basic stuff,
Hmm.
because Google became my best friend as a
Yeah.
programmer. Don't be afraid of failing. Be okay with it. Just be prepared with if you're doing a live presentation.
Yes.
Um, and regarding Elixir, uh, regarding Elixir, be really um, have a lot of attention on what's happening with Elixir. It's a
Okay.
language that has a really good roadmap with live view, so web development. It has really good things for machine learning at the moment. Even yesterday, something was released where you basically can pull pre-trained models and use everything out of the box. It's basically 5 or 6 lines of code to
Oh.
actually do it, which is just stupidly awesome. And it just came out yesterday.
Hmm.
It's a ever evolving ecosystem. There's nerves to work with embedded systems. Uh, there's Livebook where you can have Jupyter notebooks kind of out of the box. just look into this ecosystem. It's really interesting. The community is really friendly. Everyone just is really happy with using Elixir, and everyone is really happy with sharing that experience. So
Yeah.
use it. Just have fun with it and blow up servers and processes because it's a hell of a fun thing to do.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, so we are calling it for this session. So thank you so much, Felipe, for your
Thank you.
time. You're
Thank
amazing.
you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, sure.
No, no, you are. This is a great initiative, and again, thank you so much for the invite. And again, thank you for the patience and and for well listening to me for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's totally fine.